All right, welcome back to Activity 423, Moving with Color. Gabe Valdez here with part two of this video. In part one, we explored steps 1 through 11, where we got to play with the servo to position it from -45 to 55 degrees, the two limits of that 100-degree rotation for that servo. And then we went ahead and added a midpoint to essentially make the servo move in three positions. What we're going to do now in step number 12 and on is explore the V5 optical sensor. The V5 optical sensor is a really cool component and sensor that does multiple things. They have us connected to port number one. I'm going to deviate from the instructions just a wee bit. And I believe I plugged mine into port number two, if I'm not mistaken. We can go take a look at it in just a second. So what I'm going to do now is I'll go ahead and share my iPad screen, and we can go ahead and take a look at it together. So as we take a look at what I have set up here, I'm going to move this over to my V5 brain, and I'm going to click the power button. That's going to take me back. I've been running a program nonstop, so I'm going to stop running that. And I am going to then take a look at going back again. So I'm going to press the power button, and I'm going to go over to devices. And I went ahead and added my optical sensor to port number two. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And it is a color sensor as well, but it can do other things. So I can, tell how far an object is, if it's near, or if it's far. So if I put my hand, near, it'll give me a near. It'll also give me a color reading as well. And then it also detects, ambient light. And so I'm getting a brightness of 0.10 there. If I take my cell phone and I shine my light over again, here's my optical sensor, and shine it over my optical sensor, you can see that value for that brightness increasing. And so I can detect brightness and use it as kind of a brightness sensor. I can use it to tell if my objects are near, far, or close. And then I can also use it to detect color. I have the ability to turn on this LED. And so as I take a look at my optical sensor, I'm going to click right here on brightness, 10%, 25%, and I'm going to move it all the way up to 100%. And that's going to turn my LED on all the way, and that'll give me the ability to read color a little bit better. So I've got these two little blocks here. One is red, one is blue. And so as I take my red block and place it over my sensor, you can see that it gives me a reading of 1010. You can see that center wheel, that center ring, you can see that color turn to red. And you can also see the arrow move as well with that to the appropriate color. My blue one, I can go ahead and place that over, and it gives me a blue reading as well. Now, in this activity, what we're going to do as we program, we are going to essentially set up my iPad again. Sorry, excuse me. Use my optical sensor to detect between these two blocks. And then based on the color reading of the optical sensor, we are going to position that servo to move the arrow to the blue position, to the red position. And at some point later on in the activity, we are also going to not only move the servo, but we're going to get the LEDs to turn on. So that way, if it's blue, the servo moves to this position, but the blue LED also lights up. And then the same thing for the red. If it's a red block, it'll move over the arrow to the red text, and then my red LED will turn on. And then at some point, we're going to play with the smart motor to do the same thing. So not only are we going to position the servo to go from blue to red, we'll also position this smart motor to go from blue to red. All right, so let me go ahead and position this a little bit better. And let's go ahead and dive right into the activity. Let me minimize that. So it says connect optical sensor to port one. I went ahead and used port two. So what I'm going to do is in my code here, I'm going to, and this was parts. So I'm going to add parts 1 through 11. And if I'm done with this, what I could easily do is I could add some hashtags in front of it, and that's going to ignore all of these lines of code. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and add another comment here, and this is going to be parts 12 on. I'll figure out how far we get up to in this video. So let's go and take a look. It says in your code, configure the optical sensor to port number 1. I'm going to deviate from that just a little bit again. To come over here and I'm going to add a device. So I click on devices, add a device, and I have an optical sensor and I'm connecting it to port 2 instead. Optical 2, click done. Okay, so slight deviation from the activity, but I think we can be okay with that. So again, going back up here, I now have optical 2 sensor set up in port 2, and then it's an optical sensor. It can minimize this again, get rid of all those lines of code that I don't need. Well, I do need them, but I don't need to see them. So let me clarify. Now, one point of clarification with the servo is that a servo is a position setting. So it's not going to be continuous rotation. It's a position setting. And so it's not a power setting. So the servo moves to those positions and then stays at that position until you tell it to move somewhere else, as opposed to a motor. When you give it a power setting, that motor spins continuously. Okay. Well, anyway, coming back down here. So confirm that the sensor is configured properly. We just did that. Comment out your servo block of code, add 3 single quote characters before and after the code block. So I did single lines or single line comments rather. Let me go ahead and try the, let me try this. Is it 3 commas or 3 apostrophes? Let's find out. So let's try 1, 2, 3. Oh, look at that. 1, 2, 3. So it looks like it's apostrophes and it's probably going to ignore this code. We'll find out if it does or if it doesn't. Okay, so multiple line comment using those 3 apostrophes. Fantastic. So use the optical sensor brightness to continue to display the amount of ambient light in your classroom. Remember to include a brief wait to allow time for the sensor to report its values. As you click on this, it says use while true infinite loop. At each iteration, clear the screen, set the cursor, use optical brightness, and wait. So we are going to print the ambient light reading of the classroom or of my room on the display of the V5. Okay. So to do that, what we are going to do is use while true. We are going to clear the screen. We're going to set the screen cursor to the first position, which is 1, 1. And then what we're going to do is we are going to print the optical brightness of my sensor. And then we're going to wait 0.3 seconds. And then it's going to loop back around and repeat. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do that. So I am going to move this over here so I can see both at the same time. All right, so we are in part 12. Actually, we are in part like 15 now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to, I believe, looks. And here I have my options for printing or moving the cursor and clearing my screen. So we are going to clear the screen first. And so I'm going to place that right in here. Now I do want this in a while loop. So I can type the word while, I can add a space. I want it to always be true. And then I'm going to go ahead and add colon. And I'm going to go ahead and tab this over so that way I can start placing things within my while loop. Okay, and this while loop will always be true because I forced it to be true. I can make a while loop true based on a condition. For example, while my optical sensor is reading a color of blue, or while my distance sensor reads a value less than 100 centimeters, whatever the case may be. But in this case, I am making that true always, which means I'll get stuck in this while loop. I can never leave this while loop because I forced it to be true. Anyway, let's go ahead and we are going to clear the screen. We are going to set the cursor to that first position on my brain. I am then going to print the brightness. And so I'm going to click on brain screen print, which is right here. Now, what it's initially doing is going to print some text, but I don't want text. So I'm going to delete this. What I really want is I want to print the brightness of my optical sensor. So I go to sensing, and now I've got optical options that I didn't have before, because now I've set up in my devices that optical sensor. So if you ever feel like you've got lines of code missing, that you don't have options, for example, you're trying to get something to move, but you don't have any servo or motor options, well, it's probably because you haven't set up your devices in the device setup here on VEX V5. So I've got that optical sensor set up. So as I go to sensing, I do have my optical options, and I'm going to select optical brightness, and I'm going to print that brightness on the screen. And then I'm going to wait. Wait is, I believe, under control. And I'm going to wait 0.3 seconds. And what this is going to do, again, I'm going to be stuck in this while loop where it clears the screen, sets the cursor to 1:1, gives me my brightness, waits 0.3 seconds before I get a new value. So when it loops back, it'll clear the screen again, and then I'll get that new brightness. So as my brightness changes, I should see that new value print on my screen. So I'm going to use my iPad, or I can actually turn off my lamp here to see different readings. Let me go ahead and download this to the robot. So I'm going to go back to my iPad. Let me display this. All right. Did I download it already? So downloading. I've got no errors. Fantastic. So it's already downloaded. So I can click on run on my screen here. So notice it's 423 moving with color. And I should see a value from this optical sensor print on my brain. There it is. All right, so I'm getting a reading of, as you can see, 46, and the decimal values are changing as I maybe grab my cell phone and shine this light over it. I can see I've gone to 100% brightness, or 100, value of 100. Scale this back, and my value goes back down. You can turn off this lamp that I have here, and my value goes way down to 1.20. Turn my lamp back on, and my value goes back up. All right, pretty cool. I can play with my optical sensor and print that value on my screen. Again, looking at my code here, I am clearing my screen, setting the cursor to that first position on my brain, and then printing the optical brightness. And then I wait 0.3 seconds before I loop back around. All right, so pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and stop this code. I hit the stop button up top, and you can see on my V5 brain, it's gone back to this screen where it's asking me, do I want to run it again, etc. All right. It also shows that I'm programming in Python, which is kind of, I never noticed that before. So that's kind of cool. All right, so I'll set this back up again, and let's go ahead and move on to the next steps of the activity. So let me minimize my iPad here, and let me scroll down. It says, notice that the optical sensor has a built-in LED. Okay, so this was really part 16 or part 15. Okay. All right. So notice that the optical sensor has a built-in LED with your recorded dark and bright values. Use the optical instructions, set light to turn the LED on when your environment is dark and off when it is bright. Okay, so we are going to turn the light on when it is dark and off when it is bright. So if dark, turn on the LED light. If bright, turn the LED off. So I'm going to comment out using my 3 apostrophes here, part number 15. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to use a hashtag, and I'm going to call this part number 17. So let me think this through. Okay. So I probably want this to always be in a while loop, so I can type while true and then use colon. All right, so what do I want to be checking? If So another thing you can do, I've been typing, but if you go over to control, you could use these if and else statements here. So I'm going to go if else, because if this condition is true, I'm going to do one thing. If my condition is false, I'm going to do another thing. Or I could do two if statements. Let me see what they intended in the activity. So they use if else as well. Okay. Um, Now, it looks like they are going to continually print that brightness on the screen. So what I'm going to do is, let me go ahead and copy this here. So that way I can separate those two sections of code. Because in part 15, we just did this. In part 17, we're doing what we just did in part 15 plus that if else statement. So if, all right, what's my condition? All right, so set light is going to turn the LED on. But what my condition is going to be is if I go back to sensing, if my optical brightness is less than a value. Okay, so if my optical brightness is less than, and remember my values were somewhere in the 40s when my lamp was on, and when my lamp was off, it went to I think 1. So let me go ahead and use those values. So if it's less than 40, I want, and again, I can add a comment here. So is my light off? Question mark. Okay, so if my light is off, I am going to set light. Now, I can't set a light yet because I haven't set up my LEDs. I'm going to go here to devices, add a device, and I'm going to go to 3-wire, and I'm going to select LED. The LEDs I've plugged into ports B and C, and so I'm going to select B. I do not remember if that's my blue or red LED. I've got them both plugged in right now, and it looks like it is my blue LED. So I'll just call it LED B and leave it as is, or I can call it LED blue. Click done. All right. I am going to exit this now. And I now have the option. So as I scroll up in my code, I click on this and I see that I've got this line of code that's been added, LED blue, now in port B. Okay, so I'm going to, if my optical brightness is less than 40, then again, this is asking, is my light off? And if it is, then what I want to do is I want to turn my LED on. So if I go over to let's see. Where is my LED located at? Here it is. Okay. It's in looks. So LED on. Am I reading this wrong? Oh no, we're turning the LED on, the LED that's on the optical sensor itself, not a separate LED. So I didn't have to go in and do this. So let's scratch that. Let me delete that. I will add those later. But what we're going to do is just turn the LED that is on the optical sensor on. And I think, oh, I missed that right here. Notice the optical sensor has a built-in LED. So that's the one we're controlling. Context clues, Gabe. Context clues, okay? So I was going to use the Vex LED. So if my optical sensor is reading a value less than desirable, meaning it's dark, what we're going to do is we are going to take this optical 2, set light, and we're going to tell our LED to turn on. Okay. If that condition is false, meaning my brightness is greater than 40, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my LED off. And so what I'm going to do is then grab this drag this over. And rather than it being on, I'm going to say be off. Okay. Now, again, I'm continually printing on my brain. If my brightness is less than 40, turn my LED on. If that's not true, so in other words, it's greater than 40, turn my LED off. All right, let's test to see if this is going to work. Let me go ahead and turn my iPad back on so we can see it. I am going to download this to my V5 brain. And I am going to hit run. Let me go ahead and position this because I believe the one that should be turning on is my blue LED. Let me go ahead and, or not my blue LED, my optical sensor LED, sorry. Downloaded already. Let me go ahead and run it. All right. So my optical sensor LED is off because I am reading a value greater than 40. So as soon as I turn off my lamp, I should read a value less than 40. And in that case, my optical sensor light should turn on. You saw it turn on just briefly because I think I was blocking it with my hand. There it is. Okay. I'm reading a value less than 40. And my optical sensor LED turns on. LED turns on once I no longer meet that condition. So going to my code, if my brightness is less than 40, my optical sensor light turns on. If this condition is false, I do this instead. So that's how an if else works. If this condition is true, do this. Otherwise, so if this condition is true, do this. Otherwise, else, do this instead. All right. So let's go ahead and move on with the activity. That was part 17. And we're going to now sense some colors. Okay. So in addition to sensing the amount of light, the optical sensor can also detect color. So I have two different colored items on my screen here. So you can see I've got these red and blue foam cubes that I got with my Dobot robot arm, or my Doobot robot arm rather. And so I'm going to use those for my objects for determining the color of or sensing between the two different colors here. So let's go ahead and scroll down. It says display the color that the optical sensor detects when you hold different colored objects in front of it. Comment out your code block that reports brightness. And above the while loop, turn the sensor's LED on for better color detection. So I did mention that your LED should be on to detect color better. So we're going to turn that on. And then in the while loop, we're going to show the value from the color instruction. Okay. So we can check our code as we build our code. So that was part 17. I am moving now to hashtag part 19. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go ahead and paste this. I'm going to use my multiple line comment with 3 apostrophes to comment out that section of code. And now I'm doing part number 19. Okay. So as I read through this, it says above my while loop, turn the sensor's LED on for better color detection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's see, would that be under, let's see, here we go. Optical set light. Okay. And what we're going to do is this line of code here is going to turn that LED on, which is what I want. This will allow me to read the color better. All right, we are going to clear my screen. I'm going to set the cursor to 1, but instead of printing the brightness, let me delete this. I'm going to print the color and I'll wait 0.3 seconds. And then again, it's a while loop, so it'll loop back around. And depending on the object, it should print that color each and every time. So let me go ahead and download this to my brain. Let me go ahead and go here. I'm going to take my red block. I'm going to hit run. This turns on. Oh, and it's giving me hex. Interesting. So I can see that it is changing. But I wonder how I can get this to actually display color. I guess maybe it can't because of the fact that, you know, what is red? And I'm sure there's a million different shades of red. So let's take a look at the activity. So you may be surprised at the value your program displays. It's an RGB format that the color uses. Okay, so RGB. So to improve your output, you can test whether the sensor detects a particular color using an if statement with the double equals. So the double equals is asking the question, is it equal to this? And built-in color variable. Then you'll be able to report a human readable color. So let's go ahead and do that instead. So we are going to, instead of doing that, we're going to add an if statement. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create part 20. I'm going to comment out that section of code. Let me stop my program. All right, so I'm going to copy this over. And then I'm going to add an if statement. If, and then optical sensor, so optical color. If my optical color, double equal sign, is color red. Colon. Then what do I want it to do? Then I want it to print on my brain. So I'm going to go to looks. I'm going to do brain screen print, which is right here. And if my color is red, then I'm going to print red on my screen. Now, that's all we're doing here. And I think somewhere else it's going to have me print red or print blue, and maybe not, but I'm going to go to extend this. And so I'm going to put the word else. Oops. It made an entirely new if when I typed else manually. So let me get rid of this if. All right. There we go. If my optical sensor is reading a color red, print red. Otherwise, well, maybe I don't want an otherwise, because what if it's not blue? So let me do another if statement. Let's see if we can back that up a little bit. So if it's blue instead, then print blue. So let's try this out. Okay. And then I want to put a weight. Maybe I don't need a weight, but let's go ahead and try it. All right. Let me download this. Let me cross my fingers, make sure I don't have any errors. Indentations are important. One indentation underneath the while. So all of this is going to be looped. One indentation underneath the if to document or to demonstrate what the true command is going to be. So if this is true, do this. If this is true, do this. Both if statements are separate from one another. All right, but it should continually loop. So let's go ahead. I believe I downloaded it. I forgot. Let me click it again. Let me open up my iPad. It's not mirroring. Go ahead and mirror that again. All right. So let's go ahead and run it. My optical light should turn on. So let me scoot this over so we can see the code and the VEX at the same time. So my optical sensor should turn, LED should turn on, and then it'll jump into that while loop. So let's go ahead and hit run. All right. So nothing's printing because none of my if statements are true. It's not red or blue. Oh, there it is, blue. There it is, red. Pretty cool. All right, so that's working. All right, let me go ahead and stop that program. And let's go ahead and move forward by taking a look at if an object is near. Okay. So I extended this to not only just print red, but also to print blue, since I had red and blue. Why not? Let's do it if we can. All right, so now in step 21, or part 21, it says add an is near object instruction to your program before printing the color value. Okay. Add two if statements, each with its own brain screen print statement, and report human readable colors such as red or blue. Okay. Well, I just did that. So I jumped ahead, check your code. So if an object is near, all right, so what they want us to do is only print if an object is near. Okay, so in step number 21, or part 21, I'm going to be detecting between red and blue only if I detect an object. So if an object is near. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy what I just did over to part number 21. I am going to multiple line comment part 20 out using 3 apostrophes there. That's now commented out. And so in part 21, we are going to clear the screen. We are going to, oh, I also need the LED. I need the LED on the optical sensor to turn on. So let me go ahead and put that there. All right, so clear my screen, set my cursor to 1, 1, but I only want to detect between red and blue if it detects an object. If there's no object in play, I don't want to bother checking. So I'm going to write an if statement. So if, and I'm going to go to sensing, if my optical is near an object, so if this is true, how do I ask the question, is it true? Well, that's the double equal sign. Equals equals 1 is asking the question, is an object near? Is an object, is that true? If that is true, then I want to do these things here. So I'm going to indent 1 time each. Okay. So if my object is near, and I may not need this weight here. Let's see what happens. Okay. If an object is near, check my color sensor to determine if it's red or if it's blue, and it's going to print either one of those on the screen. Okay. If it's not reading an object is not close, in other words, this is false, it won't bother printing red or blue on my screen. But it should be continually looping, which means it should clear my screen. And so if I'm not detecting anything, my screen should be clear. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and give this a go. So I'm going to download it. I am going to take a look at my iPad. So let me open that up again. There we go. So I'm going to run it. LED comes on. Nothing is printing on my screen. No object is detected. Uh-oh. What's not working? See something flashing there. Okay. Well, here's the problem with this code. All right. They've asked you here to check your code. Oh, they do have that weight there, you doofus. All right. So yeah, we need that weight because without that weight, what happens? It's good to see that. If I don't put a weight, it's going to loop back immediately and clear my screen. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a weight, and I don't want it to be nested within the if statement because that'll only wait if that condition is true. I want to go ahead and bring that out of the if statement, which is right here. Okay, let me download this again. All right, good to make mistakes, learning experience there. If I don't have that weight, it'll loop back instantly and clear my screen. Now I can go ahead and try this again. There it is, blue. Move it out of the way, clears my screen. Red, move it out of the way, clears my screen. Red again, blue again. You get the idea. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and stop that. That takes us up to parts 21 and 22. So I'll do part 21 through 22. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here and make part 3. In part 3, we are going to set the servo to position to let me know which color it is, red or blue. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed.